Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah, Nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'd. So inshallah, we'll continue with this series on how the Prophet ﷺ interacted with various segments of people in the society, and we are still continuing with how the Prophet ﷺ interacted with his wives. And we have seen in the previous weeks that how the Prophet ﷺ really paid attention and gave time and spent lots of time with his wives. And in a very early session we said that he used to visit them twice, and all of them, the 9 of them, every day twice, okay, to see what's their status and spend some time with them. And one would be surprised saying that the Prophet ﷺ might have more important agenda during his day. But really all these things shows that it's something that sometimes we neglect, but this is very important to give proper time for the family and wives. And this is indicated in one hadith I would like to share with you. This hadith is in Tabarani, and Sheikh Albani branded it to be Sahih hadith. Here the Prophet ﷺ said, كل شيء ليس من ذكر الله عز وجل فهو لهو إلا 4 خصال. That anything that does not involve the remembrance of Allah is something wasteful, lahu, okay, except 4 things. مشي الرجل بين الغرضين, and here it's meant the shooting target, okay. So when the person is spending time in learning this skill of shooting, okay, this is something not wasteful of time. وتأديبه فرسه, and maintaining and spending time to mend and train his horse is another joyful thing, but it is not waste of time. وملاعبة أهله, and spending intimate time with one's wife is also a third type of this khisal. And finally وتعلم السباحة, and learning the swimming, okay, learning to swim, how to swim. So these are some of the things the Prophet ﷺ exempted from being lahu, because all of these things, if you think deeply, there are things that trains the society and the people community for jihad, okay, and also facing the situation, also spending time with the wife. So since we are in this topic of giving time and entertainment to the wives, I would like to mention this hadith by Aisha radiallahu anha. She said that خرجت مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في بعض أسفاره وأنا جارية لم أحمل اللحم ولم أبدن. In one of the early expeditions, when Aisha radiallahu anha, she was with the Prophet ﷺ in one of the expeditions and in one of the journeys in Safar, and at that time she was still small, young, and she did not carry any meat, means she still she did not gain weight. Okay, walam abdun. فقال للناس تقدموا. The Prophet ﷺ told the other people, just go ahead, and he stayed behind. ثم قال لي تعالي حتى أسابقك. So the Prophet ﷺ offered to Aisha, said, let's do a race, okay, who wins. فسابقته. Then they both, Aisha and Prophet ﷺ, they started a race, okay, running. But Aisha radiallahu anha, she was the winner in this round. فسكت عني حتى إذا حملت اللحم وبدنت ونسيت. Then the Prophet ﷺ kept silent for a long time, and until Aisha radiallahu anha, she gained weight, okay, after maybe several years. Allahu alam, she did not mention the time here. وخرجت معه في بعض أسفاره. The same scenario repeated, and they were both in the journey after some years. فقال للناس تقدموا. The same thing, the Prophet ﷺ told the people, go ahead, and he stayed behind with Aisha radiallahu anha. ثم قال تعالي حتى أسابقك. So now this is the second round, and Prophet ﷺ said, let's go for a race. فسابقته فسبقني. And this time the Prophet ﷺ was the winner. فجعل يضحك وهو يقول هذه بتلك. Then Prophet ﷺ, he smiled, he laughed and said, you remember, this is for that. Prophet ﷺ reminded Aisha for this thing. So see how playful, joyful and how friendship kind of entertainment the Prophet ﷺ used to practice with his wife. And when we say about this kind of entertainment, that doesn't mean the Prophet ﷺ was neglectful about the religious teachings to his wives. And this is a very important part which is very evident from many hadith, and I would just like to mention maybe 2 hadith before we end this session. عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل العشر شد مئزره وأحيا ليله وأيقظ أهله. This is a famous hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. When Aisha narrates when Prophet ﷺ, he is approaching the Ashr al-Awakhir of Ramadan, he used to tighten his garment, okay, meaning that he did not engage in any sexual encounter. وَأَحْيَا لَيْلَهُ, and he kept his whole night in ibadah, in worship. وَأَيْقَظَ أَهْلَهُ, not only himself, but he used to wake up his family. So the whole family would stay the night engaging in ibadah. So this shows that how Prophet ﷺ was very careful and attentive to the ibadah and worship of his wives. Another hadith, very interesting hadith, that shows how Prophet ﷺ also cared about the ikhlas of his wives, okay, that they do the ibadah for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أراد أن يعتكف صلى الصبح ثم دخل في المكان الذي يريد أن يعتكف فيه. When the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم intends to start his i'tikaf, he used to pray the Fajr and then enter his place of i'tikaf after Salat al-Fajr. فأراد أن يعتكف العشر الأواخر من رمضان فأمر فضرب له خباء. So in the last 10 days of Ramadan, when he intended to make i'tikaf, he ordered that his khiba, it's like a small curtain wherever he can have an isolated place, private place to make ibadah inside his masjid. فاستأذنته عائشة أن تعتكف فأذن لها فضربت فيه قبة. So Aisha, he said that I also want my own qubba, okay. So Prophet ﷺ gave her permission to make her own place of i'tikaf. فسمعت بها حفصة فضربت قبة فضربت قبة وسمعت زينب بها فضربت قبة أخرى. Okay, so Hafsa heard and saw the scene and she said, why not me? And she also built a qubba. Followed by Zainab, another wife, she said, I will also make a qubba. فلما انصرف رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من الغداء أبصر أربع قباب. Okay, so in the next morning in the Fajr, Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم was amazed to see 4 qibba next to each other. فقال ما هذا? What is this? فأخبر خبرهن. So Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم was told that this is the case. فقال البر تريدنا, that do you intend righteousness? Do you intend good with this thing? So Prophet ﷺ did not like that one after one they started to this thing. Then Prophet ﷺ said, أنزعوها فلا أراها. Remove them all, I don't want to see any of them. To the extent, فنزعت فلم يعتكف في رمضان. That's the only year when the Prophet ﷺ did not do i'tikaf in Ramadan, and he compensated that, as Aisha mentioned, واعتكف في العشر الأول من شوال. رواه البخاري ومسلم. He took the first 10 days of Shawwal as a compensation, make up of these things. Ibn Hajar commented about this hadith. He said, وكأنه صلى الله عليه وسلم خشي أن يكون الحامل لهن على ذلك المباهات والتنافس الناشئ عن الغيرة. Ibn Hajar said that Aisha did this thing. Then Hafsa saw the next day and said, I will do it. So their intention was just to compete with each other, not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ wanted to teach his wives this lesson, that if you want to do something, do it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why you saw Aisha and you did it, and Zainab saw Hafsa and Aisha and they did it. So this was a lesson of niyyah and ikhlas that the Prophet ﷺ practically showed his wives. Finally, another hadith also showing that how Prophet ﷺ took care to correct some of the maybe wrong wrong thinkings about ibadah or wrong impressions some of his wives might have. عن جويرية رضي الله عنها أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم خرج من عندها بكرة حين صلى الصبح ثم رجع بعد أن أضحى وهي جالسة. Once the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم went out of the masjid or went out of the house of Juwayriya, one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, in the Fajr time, and while he was leaving the house, Juwayriya was engaged in ibadah, in dhikr, in adhkar. And then the Prophet ﷺ returned back after a few hours, بعد أن أضحى, after the sun raised and it was time of duha, and came back to the house of Juwayriya, and she is still in the same position, doing ibadah and dhikr, with dhikr. فقالت ما زلت على الحال التي فارقتك عليها. Are you staying in the same position when I left you in the morning? Did you continue with this ibadah all the time, with this dhikr? قالت نعم. فقال لقد قلت بعدك 4 كلمات 3 مرات لو وزنت بما قلت منذ اليوم لوزنتهن. She said that she confessed that yes, I was continuing in the dhikr maybe 1,000 times or I don't know how many times. So the Prophet ﷺ said, myself, when I left, I just said 4 words 3 times. 4 words 3 times, and if my 4 words was kept in a mizan and your so many ibadah and dhikr for hours was put in another scale, my 4 words will be more than yours. So what are these for? And it is very good opportunity for us to apply it. Very simple, just pay attention. It's very simple dua. Subhanallah wa bihamdi adada khalqi wa rida nafsi wa zinata arshi wa midada kalimati. These are the 4 words, and the Prophet ﷺ repeated it 3 times in the morning. Its meaning that Subhanallah, glorifying Allah, exalted is Allah, and all praise is Allah wa bihamdi. And then Prophet ﷺ used this multiplication factor. Look at it. Adada khalqi. So meaning that I am saying this Subhanallah, adada khalqi, as much as there are creations in this universe. Wa rida nafsi, and I am repeating this until Allah becomes radi. He is pleased. Wa zinata arshi, until his arsh, the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is full. And can anything full? These things, the biggest creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa midada kalimatihi, and as much as it's needed, the ink and the pens to complete enumerating the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we know from another ayah that وَلَوْ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ مِنْ شَجَرَةٍ أَقْلَامٌ وَالْبَحْرُ يَمُدُّهُ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ سَبْعَةُ أَبْحُرٍ مَا نَفَذَتْ كَلِمَاتُ اللَّهِ. If all the seas were ink and all the trees were pen, it will never end the kalimatullah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ just used this multiplicative factor and said this thing 3 times with this multiplication. So can Juwayriya do this thing in hours or even days or years? She could not. So this is the way how the Prophet ﷺ practically taught his wives on a daily basis. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq wa hidayah. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa jazakumullahu khairan.
لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا.